Good evening, Des Moines. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty coming to you live from the Webcast 1 live studios here in beautiful downtown Des Moines. We're here every Tuesday from 6 until 7 p.m. You'll notice that I'm flying solo tonight. The good doctor, my friend and neighbor, Mr. Dr. Patrick Bertroche, is out of the country. He has decided that he needed to travel abroad and is not here this week, so I'm basically it. No guests, no phone calls, no nothing. You're treated to me 1 hour long, straight through, only interrupted by brief commercial breaks. I hope you guys are strapped in because there's a lot to talk about. Now all that about calling in and that sort of stuff, that is of course just a little bit of a joke on my part. If you wish to call in, the number is going to pop up on your screen, 855-244-0077. So please, if you want to call in and talk about the things that I've got on my mind today, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, I might just have to pull some random people out of the skywalk here. So the biggest political story in the world right now is that former Prime Minister, Baroness Margaret Thatcher, passed away. I believe it was on Sunday or Monday from a stroke, apparently. She was, I think, 86, 88 perhaps. I think she's born 25, so that would make her 87 or 88 years old. Historical figure, no doubt about it. Just one of those once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation political figures that really took hold of something in Great Britain in the 70s and turned the country around, no question about it. A lot of ink has been spilled. A lot of people have already been talking about Miss Thatcher's, Lady Thatcher's passing, I should say, and the effect that it's had on world politics. I guess I would probably say that effect is fairly minimal since she's been out of the scene for a long time. She's been failing health for a while at this point, but whenever a world leader like this passes, especially when someone who is as transformational and as big of a personality as a Margaret Thatcher passes away, the world kind of just stops and reevaluates and sort of talks about the legacy and what she achieved and some of her successes and some of her failures. And in this instance, we saw kind of an interesting reaction around the world. There were a lot of protests. Well, not protests, a lot of demonstrations in Great Britain, in England and Ireland, and around the world, and a lot of really contradictory responses. And what I found to her passing, and what I found kind of interesting, is the reaction here. The reaction to her passing away here in the States, and it really probably shouldn't be too much of a surprise since she was very, very popular here back in the 80s. You know, she was good friends with Ronald Reagan. They had a very close relationship, and really the relationship between Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan kind of, in my opinion, set up the close relationship that has been enjoyed between the British Prime Minister and the U.S. President ever since then. I think that the special relationship was really kind of, although it was there since the end of World War II, it was really forged with those two. And why should they've been friends? You know, they were ideologically paired up. They've agreed on a lot of the same sorts of economic and political philosophies, and had a lot of the same things, a lot of the same stances on foreign policy, with a few very noted differences of opinion that we will talk about here throughout this hour. So so the reaction sort of from the states, from U.S. leaders, and obviously from David Cameron, who's a conservative leader and the conservative prime minister over in Great Britain, was very, very positive. And that shouldn't really be a surprise to anybody. I got some quotes here where David Cameron said that Margaret Thatcher took a country that was on its knees and made Britain stand tall again. We cannot deny that Margaret Thatcher divided opinion for many of us. She was and is inspiration for others. She was a force to be defined against. President Obama said the world had lost one of the great champions of freedom and liberty, and the United States had lost a true friend. As a grocer's daughter who rose to become Britain's first female prime minister, she stands as an example to our daughters that there is no glass ceiling that can't be shattered. This is part of the statement that the president had on the event of her passing. And I guess the first comment that I would make about this is just whenever you have there's no question that Margaret Thatcher had a lot to deal with when she was in power, 1975 to 1990, I believe. And a lot of that was very difficult because she was a woman. She didn't get along very well with France's President Mitterrand or Helmut Kohl at all. They really didn't like her very much. She didn't like them very much. She was someone who was the I don't know if victim is the right word, but it suits the victim of subtle and not so subtle sexism in European politics, and was someone who wasn't daunted by that. And for that, she should be absolutely remembered glowingly, because while there are there's a lot of criticism that can be derived from her leadership style, from her political philosophy, from just the way she conducted herself in the world, none of that should be construed to have any sort of bearing because of her gender or because of the fact that she had a quote-unquote woman's perspective. And I find a lot of the references to her as the first and only woman prime minister to Great Britain just sort of irrelevant. It doesn't matter. She would have been the kind of person that Margaret Thatcher was. Obviously, you can't diminish the fact that she was a woman, but what she accomplished, she would have accomplished whether or not she'd been a man or a woman, in my opinion. I think that her gender, she was just one of those people that comes around and means business and takes care of things. And so over the next few segments, we'll be talking a little bit and try and encapsulate some of Margaret Thatcher's legacy and what she meant to her allies and what she meant to her opponents. And what I found really surprising, because I don't usually find this with foreign leadership, right before I came on the air, over the last probably hour, when I was wrapping up things at the office, I got into a pretty long-winded argument, although I guess I didn't intend it to be necessarily an argument, with a very close friend of mine about Margaret Thatcher, of all things, and we'll discuss some of that. And I was surprised at how passionate an American would be about Margaret Thatcher's legacy. And so we'll sort of examine what she meant to the States a little bit, and also hopefully kind of talk and provide some context to some of the action she took, both foreign and domestic, that had undeniable ripples around the world. So I hope that you stick with us over the next hour and into the next few segments. And if we have some time, if nobody decides to call in, or I just kind of run out of steam talking about Margaret Thatcher, then we will. I'll move on to some other topics that I've been thinking all week about. One of them being some of what the governor is up to, and whether or not the legislature will be able to get out in the next 3-4 weeks, or however long left they have scheduled in their session. So I want to just thank everybody for tuning in, and we're going to move on to our first break. And I hope that we see you guys back here on Webcast 1 Live. Thanks a lot.
Petrosian Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosian Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner, while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, thanks for coming back. This is the Doc and Lefty program on Webcast One Live, coming to you every Tuesday night from 6 to 7. Now, we're talking about Margaret Thatcher and her legacy in this program. The Iron Lady of Great Britain passed away a couple of days ago, and over the last, I guess it was probably yesterday, and we and the world is sort of digesting what she meant to not just world politics, or not just British politics, but also world politics in a very transitional time, being the 1980s, and there was a lot going on. Now, she was in power. She was the Conservative leader in Parliament from about 1975, starting around 1975, I believe, and she really resurrected that party from kind of the doldrums. The country, and just to kind of set the stage, the country was in an economic, I don't know if tailspin would even be the right kind of word. Just, they were called the sick man of Europe. A lot of that is placed on the backs of the trade unionists, the labor leaders, the sort of state-sponsored folks who, were draining the system dry, so to speak. And while I wish that we had Doc here to talk a little bit about this and to kind of, sort of curb my my take on this a little bit, I'm just kind of here to tell you that a lot of that, while a lot of that is true, and a lot of the overreaches by the unions and manufacturing leaders and so on and so forth was present and was a problem. Great Britain had a lot of structural inequality that was an issue and had been declining ever since World War I. I mean, economics is a long slog. It takes a long time for an economic system to really kind of break down to the level where you start to see real effects. You think about other areas like the Great Depression didn't happen overnight. Japan's lost decade didn't happen overnight, and even this fiscal crisis now that everybody on the left tries to pin on George Bush and everybody on the right tries to pin on President Obama has its roots in the 70s, really, and with some dubious choices made by a lot of different presidents of different party affiliations. It's not a strictly partisan thing. So there were a lot of things going on in Great Britain structurally that was an issue, but we were in an era of this sort of supply side, let's break the back of inflation economics. And one of the things that Margaret Thatcher did, and one of the reasons why she was such an economic compatriot of Ronald Reagan, was she thought that inflation was the big economic boogeyman in her country, that it was inflation, the rising prices, and prices were rising. I wasn't alive in the 70s, but my parents were, and I know the Doc was. The folks of that generation know how tough things were getting in the 70s with inflation, and not just the rise in like fuel prices especially, but commodities and the things that people need to survive were also on the uptick, and that was a problem. That's an absolute problem. That was her main focus economically, was to break the back of this inflation when she got in, and she was able to do it under large measure, and ignored structural, pervasive unemployment. During much of her tenure as the Prime Minister of the UK, Margaret Thatcher's administration presided over 10%, right around 10% unemployment for a lot of that time, while inflation was very, very low. And while I'm no economist, what I would say is that you see a similar situation like that happening now, where we have relatively high unemployment. I think the last I'd heard it dipped to about 7.5% because fewer and fewer people are sticking around to try and find work. But our inflation is basically zero. There really isn't any inflation right now because there's no demand. And there's no demand because there are no jobs. And so one of my criticisms of any conservative politician that talks about deficit spending and the dangers of inflation, but then ignores unemployment and ignores the issues related to job creation as being central to any kind of recovery or any kind of meaningful growth in an economy, I think just completely misses the boat. But anyway, it's a legitimate thing to talk about, and it's a legitimate goal to have. And so I'm not criticizing necessarily Margaret Thatcher's choices. I'm just kind of criticizing the political or the economic camp that she comes from, and she's not alone in that camp. The fact of the matter is that's one piece of the puzzle. However, you did see a remarkable recovery in Great Britain under the Thatcher administration for those 11 years. You saw this giant, this economic giant, basically on the backs of a reinvigorated banking sector, on the backs of reinvigorated investment sector, that really kind of was able to turn Great Britain over and become one of the larger economies that it is today, which is it really is a testament to economic achievement. Now, for that, and that's what I hear cited most often about Margaret Thatcher, is that she turned Great Britain around, man, and she did it with conviction, and she really stuck by her guns, and anybody that was against her, she didn't have any time for, and that was that's the end of the story. And what my friend and I started, were arguing about a little bit was that I feel like her legacy is much more nuanced. He took issue with the fact that a lot of these people that are demonstrating about her passing were being unfair, were being inappropriate, burning pictures of her, being just kind of disgusting. And I just want to come right out and say that demonstrations of that kind are obviously just completely useless. If you're going to make a political statement, you might as well make it in a polite manner or with some kind of a tact, I guess I would say. And because it doesn't serve anybody's purposes to make yourself look like a jackass just because you're upset about policies that probably didn't affect you if you are under the age of 40 years old directly. So I completely sympathize and agree with that point. What I don't agree with is this sort of attempt, and I don't even know if it's a concerted attempt. But you see it a lot with world leaders that pass on, is this attempt to kind of gloss over or just pick the more positive aspects of a career, of a political career, to say nice things about someone who passes away. Now, I'm all for being respectful and being completely empathetic with the family that lost a loved one, and just sort of understanding the sensitivity of a time. And I'm not coming out to criticize Margaret Thatcher personally, but when you have a political leader who was as transformational and as big of a deal as Margaret Thatcher was, I do not think that it's unfair to remember her legacy with some nuance, and remember that just because she was able to assist in the turning around of an economy that really hadn't been doing a whole lot up until she kind of took the reins of power, is not to say that, is not to make a comment about her legacy in general. It's to point out that her record is mixed. That's the phrase that I used, and I'm going to stick by that. Her record is, let's just put it this way. Her main sources of popularity, and I heard this on the BBC today, her main sources of popularity were here in the United States, and which makes sense since we had a president who was a lot like her in a lot of different ways, and in the Soviet bloc countries that she and Ronald Reagan and a lot of other leaders helped to, and also Mikhail Gorbachev helped to liberate from Soviet control. And we're coming up on another break. And so I'll just kind of talk about some of the things that have been reported, and I want to comment on them, about Margaret Thatcher's lasting legacy, and why even though it's good to talk, say nice things about a person who's passed away, when you're a political leader, when you're a public figure who affected a lot of lives in a lot of different ways, it's not unfair to point out with nuance the difficulties of a person's record. So I'll catch you right back after the break. This is Lefty, Webcast 1 Live. Thanks.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Are we, hey, there we are. Sorry about that. There was a little bit of a glitch in the system, but we're back. Thanks for continuing to tune in. We're talking about Margaret Thatcher for at least this first half hour today, and about some of the different ways to view her legacy. Certainly, in the U.S., she's viewed very favorably. She's a great friend to Ronald Reagan, who, for a lot of people, is still a very popular president. I think he's been a little bit mythologized over the last few years, and there are a lot of things that are difficult about his legacy as well, but that's all old news. Margaret Thatcher's the one in front of us today. A couple of things I want to talk about. I brought up a few different points when I was talking to my friend about this, about Margaret Thatcher's legacy, that I didn't think was right to be left out of her obituary. The first one being probably the most distressing time outside of the troubles in North Ireland, and that's the 1984 coal miners' strike. Now, you've heard Doc and I go around and around in the space about unions and their merits and their detractions from society, and I just want to point out this is not. I'm not talking about the merit of a union, the merits of unions, the worth or the destructive influences they can have. That's all something that we discussed. My opinions on unions are pretty well known, but this particular strike was something that really scarred the country very, very deeply. Pop culture reflects this. And the play Billy Elliot was about this time period, and really just a lot of things happened around in this time that have left indelible marks on the English people. Basically, the issue was that the trade unions were pretty much running the country for a long, long time, and the conservative government had had enough. Well, Margaret Thatcher's predecessor, in the Prime Minister Heath, basically was ousted by the trade unions during one of their strikes. By the coal miners. The coal miners, said said they weren't going to work, and the government said they're going to shut down the pits. The coal miners said, "Okay, fine, go ahead, and unless you're going to concede to our wishes," and the government basically folded. Margaret Thatcher's opinion was that was never ever going to happen again. In fact, in her memoirs, she said even back in 1974 that she saw the 84 strike even as far back as 74, 75, just because of how easy it was to push around the conservative government. And Margaret Thatcher wasn't about to be pushed around. Now, once again, this isn't necessarily a comment on her leadership style. That's all been being debated in England, where it has a more of a place to be. It's just sort of the record should reflect exactly what happened. Now, this friend of mine that I was talking to, his basic opinion was that the union got what it had coming. And long story short, Margaret Thatcher crushed the coal miners. They were the National Organization of that controlled all the coal mining, shut down all the pits, made a lot of them inoperable, and the coal miners struck and lost over a year-long strike with riots, with demonstrations. I think maybe 11 people died as a result of these tensions, and about thousands were arrested for rioting and violence and so on and so forth. And I don't know that number on the deaths. If that's, I thought that I read 11, but I could be wrong. So if someone to call in and correct me on that, that would be great. But she was determined not to lose, and that's an admirable quality in a leader. However, the result of that was that 11,000 people lost their jobs. Now, a lot of conservatives out there say, good, great, awesome, fantastic. You crushed the union, you won, you did it without giving up a single concession, and they, will never mess with you guys again. Well, this is my larger criticism of that line of thinking that I see so often in conservatives. I don't want to call it a conservative line of thinking. I don't want to label it that way. But I do believe, or I do have experienced a lot of my conservative friends that have that attitude that if you mess up, then you're punished, and you have to take your punishment, even if that punishment is so completely disproportionate to the crime. Now, once again, I'm not applying this strictly to the miners. The miners did a lot of bad things. The miners did a lot of hard, were hard-headed and maybe negotiated unfairly, or didn't negotiate at all and turned to violence. I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody. I'm here to say that the effect of Margaret Thatcher's policies with respect to the coal miners' strike resulted in 11,000 people being put out of work. Now, that's not the coal miners, because the coal miners had the freedom to unionize. You can't put that on them. You can say that Margaret Thatcher's response to the coal miners' demands was to, rather than deal with them, crush them. That, to me, I don't see it where there's that much debate in that particular statement. And 11,000 people lost their jobs. That means 11,000 people lost incomes. That means the families, or that the children in 11,000 families, all of a sudden were uprooted and had chaos thrown into their lives. And really, the effect that had on it just ended British manufacturing. Completely. And British manufacturing was having a hard time up until then, but that was the death blow. You can't have manufacturing without energy, and Britain now imports 80% of its coal from the Ukraine. So that that kind of tells you something right there. They don't produce coal in Great Britain anymore the way that they used to. And it's a direct result of this. Now, just to be clear, this is just a part of Margaret Thatcher's overall legacy, but when I say that her activities cost 11,000 people their jobs, that's for you all out there to evaluate and decide whether or not she was right and justified in doing so. I don't think she was. I think that any policy that affects that many people, that fundamentally their ability to work or to make a wage, and with the cultural ramifications that coal mining had in that country, going back to the first industrial revolution, I think is just completely shocking to me. And she deserves to be criticized for that, and her policy deserves to be criticized. Another policy that I took issue with in my argument with my friend was that economic inequality widened underneath Margaret Thatcher. Now, it did so under Ronald Reagan too in this country. The gap between the rich and the poor widened with both of them. In my opinion, that's a direct result of supply-side economics. And you've heard me beat this drum in this space before. You've heard Doc and I go round and round about it. The end of the day, my view is that trickle-down economics, supply-side, going after deficits and inflation in the short term is disastrous to economies. You're seeing it again in Europe with these austerity measures. It only serves to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. We'll get in more in detail about that after this next break. Thanks for sticking around. You listen to webcast1live.com.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician.
From Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Welcome back. Thanks for listening so far. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty. Doc is traveling abroad this week, and so he has left the captain's chair to me. I imagine that he's going to be watching this later when he gets back and to realize that he can never leave me alone by myself again. The last time I did this, we had a bunch of musicians in here, and that was a lot of fun. And he had a problem with that, seeing me just kind of droning on and on about Margaret Thatcher. I think maybe he might even fire me. But anyway, that's what we've got. That's the big story. That's what we're going to talk about. One of the other things that I discussed in my lengthy rapprochement with my friend was her stance on apartheid. And this is something that I was sort of shocked to find that there was still support for her policy here, because for back in 2006, David Cameron apologized for a lot of what his government did back in the 80s with respect to apartheid. Now, let me set the stage here. Margaret Thatcher opposed apartheid. She opposed the apartheid government of South Africa. She had gigantic problems, obviously, with minority control over a majority population, as most people were wont to do. The fact of the matter is, though, that when it came time to do something about it, she sort of passed the buck. She punted. The UN approach to apartheid in those days, where when the U.S. was in full support of this and was doing it itself, was to de-invest in South Africa, in South African businesses and industries, to kind of put the economic squeeze on the apartheid government and make them ease up on a lot of their social restrictions. Margaret Thatcher opposed this. She opposed sanctioning South Africa. That's in the record. There's no doubt. There's no debate about that. She opposed it. Now, the reason she gave were that, they were the the economic deprivation would be felt most keenly by the poorest members of the society, the black South Africans. She said that it would be morally bankrupt for the world to kind of pull investment out of a country because the folks that need it the most would be the ones who would hurt the most. Now, there's a certain logic to that argument, except for the fact that they weren't getting the aid anyway. The UK was the South Africa's biggest trading partner. It had the most money invested out of anybody else at that time in the entire world, and so because of the colonial ties. Now, for Great Britain not to lead the world on supporting sanctions, pulling money out of the racist South African government, I think is just a complete failure in leadership. You have and effectively meant that the status quo didn't change, because you had these businesses, these businesses that were and industries that were set up as structurally racist enterprises that disadvantaged and disenfranchised and economically harmed black South Africans just by their very nature and how they operated, being propped up by a government that said they opposed that very practice. And and it just sort of goes back to this philosophy that, well, more money will trickle down to the people who need it. Well, unfortunately, not when the people that are holding all the money and doing all the trickling are racists who don't want the folks on the bottom to get a piece of the pie. And so I think that her legacy, and you saw some of the reaction in South Africa is pretty mixed as well. Her legacy is with respect to apartheid. Now, She wasn't in favor of it. I just want to stress that once again. But that legacy is troubling, and it certainly is not something that you would hope that a leader would have on their record, as evidenced by the fact that her own government kind of disavowed it. Ronald Reagan supported sanctions. The U.S. was behind it, was pulling money out the entire time, and really it was Great Britain kind of standing alone, and just it seemed like the wrong hill to fight. Another aspect of her policies was just this complete and total distrust of any kind of the dismantling of a lot of government services. And so one of the objections that I keep hearing is that these folks who are protesting today didn't suffer under Margaret Thatcher, or her policies didn't affect them. Well, you got a lot of these younger kids who grew up in a Great Britain that didn't have the social structures, the social programs, the different things in place to give them a leg up, or to assist them in kind of helping themselves out, just like you see in Social Security here in the States, or Medicare, Medicaid. A lot of those, now not the NHS or anything like that, but just a lot of the social structures were privatized or sold off. And an honest economic philosophical stance, I will say that again and again and again, that I'm not arguing with the fact that she had this stance and that she was sincere. I'm arguing the fact that the effects were devastating for the working class, for the folks that really needed the help or really needed the government to help them just basically exist in a society that was, in their minds, rapidly leaving them behind. These aren't controversial statements, folks. These are things that a lot of people have been saying about Margaret Thatcher for years. There were a lot of riots in the 80s as a result of her economic policies. And so it baffles me that if we can't talk about this kind of stuff, then all political leaders really have to do is they can do whatever they want, and all they have to do is wait out wait out until they've passed away, and then their record will be cleaned up by apologists later. And I think that the discussion of her legacy and of any political leader's legacy broadly is one that we have to have. The mistakes and the successes need to be weighed in equal measure, and credit and criticism be doled out accordingly. That's really all I have to say about Margaret Thatcher. I don't have much else in the tank left to talk about this particular topic, and so we're going to take a quick break and come back, and we'll discuss some more things that are going on maybe in local politics or whatever else happens to cross my mind. You were listening to Webcast 1 Live. This is Doc and Lefty. Thank you so much.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Hey, welcome back. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty, webcast1live.com. This program, you know, it's constantly evolving. We appreciate all kinds of feedback and things, but today is sort of Lefty's venting day to kind of get some things off my chest that I've been thinking about over the past few weeks. And Margaret Thatcher kind of just sucked up all the air in the newsroom. And I know that I was going to talk a little bit about local politics. Another thing that I had been in talking to friends about and kind of thinking about, given the fact that we just had Easter last week, was more kind of a religious in nature. I got a lot of friends who are very religious people. I've got a lot of friends who are not as religious, and really this a really good friend of mine wrote something that I wanted to comment on and kind of elevate because I thought that it was a pretty positive thing. And he's somebody that kind of styles himself or attempts to be a little bit of a moderator between what he sees as two very polarized camps, the theist camp and the atheist camp, and was attempting through comment and sort of examination of both sides to kind of build a bridge of understanding between the two. And I'm here to tell you folks that I think that the two sides understand each other very well in the fact that they don't really understand each other at all. And that's kind of the larger point that he was hoping to make. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into my into my own particular history. Suffice to say that I am not a very religious person. I take a sort of a fence-sitter's view of the world, but I am troubled a lot by the stuff that I read and I see on both sides, from religious folks and from non-religious folks, because it to me it kind of misses the point, or it sort of muddies up the great questions that we like to ask each other and have debates about. One of the big things that I hear a lot from my atheistic friends is that they are trying to save people. What does that sound like? What is that? That just sort of let that rattle around a little bit. Atheists are trying to save people from their delusions of God. They're trying to rescue folks from this mythology they've created about a snake and a guy on a cross and a dude sleeping in a fish for 3 days. The idea of that is so strikingly condescending, so absolutely paternalistic, that I'm absolutely shocked that that anybody would say, and these are things that I've seen from atheistic friends of mine who are defending their position. That's exactly what they criticize the religious folks for. One of the things that, especially in the Bible, I'll talk a little bit about the Bible, not to beat up my Christian friends at all, but that's the religion that I know a little bit better than others, is, there is a salvation component to Christianity, and as an agnostic person, you can kind of, I was a lot more bitter and a lot more angry about it in the past, and I always kind of felt a little bit condescended to when folks say I'm trying to save your soul, or come along with us because you need the healing, the power of the Redeemer, and that always struck me a little off. I can't imagine what it must sound like to a religious person who has a very convicted sense of spirituality to hear an atheist or someone who doesn't believe what they believe say that, hey, I'm not just going to argue with you about the merits of your position, but I feel like I'm going to it's my mission to kind of save you from your delusion. It surprises me every time I hear it. I would think that since the atheists are always complaining about how the religious folks are trying to stuff the Bible down their throat, that they would have a little bit more tact than that, but maybe not. Another thing that bothers me a lot about the atheist principle, and it's because it strikes me as the other side of the same coin that was split in half and put in a different room. And what I mean by that is my agnostic objection to all theistic questions is that you just don't know. Now, the religious person says that they know through faith, and that's fine. That's something that they can hold on to and not to sound sort of trivial about it, but they accept that as what they believe and how they are going to interact with their life. And the atheist says that they don't believe just because there's nothing there, or because there's no evidence, or because the probabilities are off, but they still make that conclusion. To me, it seems just as unreasonable as the theist saying that there is a God because of faith, as it is to say there is no God because one's not there. There is no evidence either way, so we're going to conclude that there is no God. It just makes more sense to me to say there's no evidence, therefore we don't know. We can sort of hold our hands out and just say, hang on, let's let somebody reveal himself or herself, or maybe it doesn't happen, or whatever. I happen to think that the probabilities are stacked up against the existence of a God, but I haven't foreclosed myself to the possibility that a God definitely exists and could, affect my life in a positive way. I come from that tradition. And so it bothers me immensely that the atheist concludes these things and then shuns the theist for making a similar but opposite conclusion. I just don't see how that circle gets squared. And of course, and there are criticisms to be had with religious folks as well. Just I think that the more rational, the more reasonable course for anybody is, if you don't have that conviction, if you don't have that sort of that faith or that sense that something else exists in your heart, then it's okay to question. It's okay to do whatever you need to do, but don't leap to the conclusion then that means that there's nothing there. It strikes me as foolish. Now, we're going to take a very short break here. I kind of ran out of steam on that topic because apparently I didn't have as much to say about it as I thought. I must have gotten all my thoughts out on this earlier in the week. But we're going to take another short break. We're going to come back, close the show, and really appreciate you guys sticking around to be a part of it. Thanks a lot.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Welcome back. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty, webcast1live.com. And you know, this is what I like about this kind of show is that over the break, you bring up a topic and someone wants to chime in because they're interested in it. And right now, we're going to go to our fantastic, wonderful, inimitable, I like saying that word, inimitable, producer, Ryan Northfield. Ryan is going to, Ryan was talking over the break how he's fascinated in these kinds of questions. We're going to talk a little bit about the existence of a God. We're going to talk and try and define some of the issues between believers and non-believers with a little bit more clarity. So, Ryan, you've been with us all afternoon. What do you think? You can't wait for Doc to get back, huh?
Oh, I don't know. I thought it's been going pretty well.
Oh, well, good.
I've been trying to get Pat on the Skype, but he hasn't.
Yeah, it just didn't work out this time. Well, so Ryan, why don't you kind of talk a little bit about what your thoughts on this issue? I guess I don't know a less broad way of putting that question.
Well, you were talking about how you kind of are. Here, I'll wait for you to get your headphones. Your position on, which was your position on. You don't know whether there's a God. You're inclined to say that there isn't a God, but you're open to there maybe being a God. And I thought that was quite interesting. Throughout my life, I've kind of studied apologetics here and there. I've seen debates between atheists and Christians, and one of the main arguments I've heard, and I'd like to hear your side on it, is the origins of morality. Where does morality come from?
Oh, okay. So,
unless you want to go a different route, we could go how you know anything. Epistemology.
Epistemology, yeah. Well, I haven't thought about epistemology since college, but at least like the origins of morality, I don't. The fact is, I mean, there's a dilemma at the heart of it, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you've read your Plato, I assume, if you even brought it up.
No, actually, there's some recent guys that talk about it.
Well, so. the basic dilemma at the heart of any kind of discussion about the origin of morality is whether or not morality derives, directly from the gods themselves, or whether or not morality exists outside God, exists by itself, and therefore God would either be sort of imposing it as a dictator would, or is subject to its rules and its strictures. That's one of the, I don't know if it's the earliest, but one of the most clearly defined works, or one of the first works to kind of clearly define that was the Euthyphro dialogue, where Socrates kind of lays that out while he's in prison, waiting to be executed. I guess that's the central question. My response, as far as morality is concerned, is just like to me, it doesn't need to be imposed. It doesn't need to come from an outside space, because I myself, as a thinking person, I'm self-referential, and I understand what I enjoy and what I think is good for myself and what I think is bad for myself. And because when I see things, I look at things and they're similar to me, I can make the at least the partial existential leap that the things that would hurt me would hurt you, the things that would be beneficial to me would be beneficial to you, and therefore the source of morality in that sense would be the social contract.
The source of morality. Okay. I don't know if I exactly understand what you said by the source of morality being the social contract.
I think it derives organically from people's own existence with respect to one another.
So these moral laws came up out of people relating to each other?
Absolutely.
And that means that their consciences are something that we do not know or how they originated, and thus we are now saying that we basically don't know how they originated. We just think. I guess I'm kind of going toward the epistemology argument right now.
I get a little bit.
How do you know? How do you know that to be true?
I would say, I mean, any kind of discussion about. I mean, first of all, no one who's like a cognitive psychologist or a cognitive philosopher has any idea how consciousness came about.
Yeah.
I mean, any claim that that consciousness was given by a creator, I mean, that presupposes the fact of a creator, and so any sort of argument from that point to me is colored in that regard, and so I would say that how do I know anything? You kind of know it by experience. Hopefully, there's no if you are a good materialist, you think that it all kind of just derives from what you see, that there is no metaphysical mystery.
My question would be to you is, how do you know that?
I don't know. I don't know how I know that, and my doubt, the mystery and the doubt is okay with me. I don't see. Yeah.
See, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I think you're answering completely consistent. That you don't know, but you do know that you know something. You don't know how, but you do know. Everyone knows something. My explanation would be that the only way we can know something, here I'll change my camera. The only way we can know something is if it was told us by someone who knows everything for sure. If they can come to us and they know everything to exist, they are all powerful and can reveal themselves to us and give us knowledge. Okay, then they can say, okay, you are not in a dream. You can sense reality. You can trust your senses that you can sense reality. And my argument is that I can know this because it has been revealed to me that by an almighty being that he exists.
Okay, so you're a lot more Cartesian than I would be.
I have no idea what Cartesian
means. Because and I'm not trying to name drop and be obnoxious like that, but I mean, because you're saying a couple of different things. You're saying that you think, and therefore you sort of are confident in your existence, right?
I'm saying that my thoughts have been, truth has been revealed to me.
Okay, truth has been revealed to you.
Yes.
In what way?
Through the Word of God, the Bible.
Through the Bible itself.
Yes, that's the only. Truth that we can say is 100% true.
That the Bible is 100% true.
Yes.
Okay. Even though a lot of it is sort of messed up.
How so?
Well, okay. So let's take one example, and this is one example that I can, because I've been sort of thinking about getting back into reading again. So do you remember the story of Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah? You remember Abraham on the ledge with the angel, who may or may not have been God, kind of bargaining for the city of Sodom?
Yes, yes.
Now, would you agree with me that person was God, basically, or God's intermediary?
I have interpreted it to be God, yes.
Okay, and God and when God speaks, when God declares something, that is the truth. And that God would never change that because he couldn't. Right?
Never.
So God makes a determination that Sodom and Gomorrah must be destroyed. That just hands down destroyed.
Okay.
And Abraham says, well, hold on a second. What if there's 100 good people? And God says, no, okay, yeah, you're right. I'll let those 100 people get out. I won't destroy the city if there's 100. What if there's 10? What if there's 1, right?
He goes down to 10, and there's only like 4.
Sure, right. So, but he destroys the city anyway.
Yeah.
Now, my thought there is, first of all, why is God bargaining with anybody? Why is God even allowing someone to question what he himself has said is the truth? And why would he permit that to happen?
That is a very good question. See, the difference, we're coming at this from two different angles. I'm going down to the very core of us and our debate. You're coming at this from the Bible may be wrong. I'm coming at this from I know that the Bible is 100% true. So even now our responses are going to be biased.
Absolutely.
But my explanation would be that God had decreed already that he would decreed as been said that this will happen, and he knows that it will happen after he has decreed it. Not he's just looking in the future. He is all powerful, thus he has decreed that it will happen. And he also decreed the means of that conversation.
Okay.
That he would not have decreed that city of Sodom to be destroyed if there had been 10. But he, by his being Almighty God, knew and decreed that there would not be.
Is there a difficulty between omniscience and freedom?
This is a difficult topic. There is it all depends on what you mean by freedom, because we can have free will within our natures. God, if that's what you're asking, our freedom to, is that what you're directing at?
So, I mean, and we're rapidly running out of time here.
You can end up whenever you want. We can continue this later.
Yeah, we'll have to, because I have to. It's very obvious that I have to go back to back to the books, because I haven't done this since for a long time. But so I guess the central question. I mean, first of all, you're right. We'd have to have the identity of, or have to have the discussion what freedom was, I suppose. But so freedom for you is not the infinite realm of possibility.
No.
Yeah. Exactly. So it doesn't. So doing one thing, cause and effect, one thing or another, that's not freedom for you. Are you more along the lines of it's freedom as long as it's got what God says it is?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think. And that's what I have the biggest difficulty with, because if that's the case, then how can you ever be held accountable for sin? Ever.
That is a good question.
Doesn't sin intrude on that?
And that would take a little bit to explain.
It would take a little bit to explain. Anyway, but Ryan, thanks for jumping in to help me close out the show.
No
I want to thank again all of the sponsors for webcast1live.com. We want to wish Doc Pat Petrosh, wherever you are, a safe and speedy return, and we'll be back to titillate your political, religious, and socioeconomic senses. Here another exciting edition of Doc and Lefty next week, 6 to 7 p.m., webcast1live.com. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Ryan Northfield, for producing the show and for talking with me here at the end. Have a great week, everybody.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.